second point is that what we're interested in management accounting is also the effects of accounting on managers. So how does, under the eye of accounting, being viewed within accounting numbers, how does that actually change management's behaviour? So accounting brings with it a level of visibility. And that visibility, the knowledge that you're being seen as a manager, can have effects, can have dysfunctional behavioural effects, can have identity, psychological behavioural effects as well, which we're interested in. So far, we've seen management accounting as being, can be rationally used to make decisions. It can have a behavioural outcome as far as controlling people's behaviour, and then it can have some form of psychological effect in knowing that you're being watched. The third way is, or the third point I want to talk about with management accounting is the ways that management account for themselves. So we have seen a growth in new forms of external and internal reporting. The main categories of those reports we've seen are intangible asset reporting, or intellectual capital, intellectual or knowledge-based reporting, which talks about how all the other sort of intangible forms of value that an organisation creates and wants to report about. And I think that these forms of assets, these intangible assets, are far more important for knowledge-based industries and industries that gather their value in ways that cannot be put down in the traditional forms in traditional balance sheets. And there's much research, especially out of Sydney University, that does that, that looks at that. Also, there's a growth of CSR, corporate social responsibility reporting, where managers are responding to the pressures of stakeholders in regards to their activities and how they affect the environment, or sort of certain social issues about equality and equity and things like that. So that's another very interesting form of management accounting that we're going to be looking at. Even though we could call them external reporting, financial reporting in a way, they are still very much a representation by managers about how they're performing in certain ways, and that are the outcome of certain external pressures. So that is number 3. And number 4 is our non-management account of managers. So I like to put this in because managers aren't always honest about their performance, and it is a very, very good and critical exercise, a very useful exercise for researchers and students to be critical about these representations and try and get to the bottom of what they mean, not just in terms of whether they're right and wrong, but what does it mean for, why would managers want to be seen in this way or this way? Why are managers trying to represent that they've got a large amount of intellectual capital, or that they're being trying to employ more women or more minority groups? What does this mean? What ideology are they trying to sustain, or what sort of expectations are they trying to achieve here? And I think that's interesting. They're very interesting points. And so that's more of an angle that we'll take. And number 5 is managing accountants, which is, so that's managing management accounting, managing accountants. And what do I mean by that? Well, this is the whole trying to understand the ways in which accounting manages us as accountants or as junior staff members within organisations. And this accounting can be used in a number of ways. We'll be talking in 2 weeks' time about recruitment processes and personnel assessment exercises, what is called human resource management. And accounting information has, or information about us and about the goals we've achieved, the values we've set ourselves, and our superiors' opinions of us, they are all under the umbrella of accounting. They're all part of accounting, and we're managed through those particular bits of information. And I'm going to sort of talk to you about ways that you can succeed in those processes of evaluation and some of the pitfalls, the problems with them. And also recruitment. What sort of accounting is used in recruitment? How are CVs ordered? How are different points in the CV given different ratings? How do what sort of role does psychological tests like Myers-Briggs play in the recruitment process? And lastly, I'm going to be talking about how are we managed on an imaginary level as accountants. One of the things that pulls a lot of talented students out of medicine and engineering or science and into accounting is that it is now seen to be a very desirable job that has a lot of influence, a lot of power within society. And why has this come about? Well, CPA and CA have made very, very expensive and effective advertising campaigns that have created a different image, different imaginary around accounting, what it is to be an accountant. And a lot of students are sort of falling into that. Now, I think we're also going to be looking at, or we definitely are also going to be looking at the problems with that, and that the unfair expectations that these very talented students put then on their profession, and the disappointment that can come when they find out eventually that accounting is just looking at numbers and reconciling accounts, and that contrary to the CA ads, we're not flying, across the world and on in the streets of London making big deals with the Queen or Richard Branson, or I think I saw a CPA ad the other day where there was this cool dude with thick glasses like on the fashion run walk, and the fashion designer was sort of asking him questions about what he thought of the garments. That's not going to happen. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. So, but it's important to look at that imaginary apparatus critically.
I've always been very competitive. That's why I became a CPA. First it was Prada, now Christian Dior in Hong Kong. Fashions come and go, but when you're a CPA, you never go out of style.
So we've talked about management accounting, and now let's have a look at what current issues are. Well, this course considers current issues to be contemporary problems. So it sees an issue as being something that is of interest, that is problematic, that it needs to be questioned. And our first attempts would be, it needs to be answered, it needs to be sorted out. But what I'm hoping to do in this course is create a wisdom in you that eventually sees business problems, contemporary issues, as being not necessarily solvable. What we're trying to do is look at particular contemporary issues from many different perspectives and bring in the knowledge of many different disciplines. And from that, we get a better understanding of the problem. We don't necessarily get an answer and say, well, the answer is 27. There you go. But what we'll find is that through looking at the problem through different ways, we get a better understanding of it. We might get solutions that we can attempt, but pretty much always when you try and implement something, when you try and solve something, something else springs up in place. Some other dysfunctional behaviour or some other problem springs up in its place. So management is just the constant process of realigning or trying to get on top of, trying to be informed about what's going on in the organisation. And so how do we find out about these current issues? How do we find out about these contemporary problems? Well, we look at cases. I've talked about that before, but cases give us real life insights into contemporary problems. I think it's the best way of understanding business problems is to see and to look inside the companies that are actually having them, to try and gather as much data as possible about those particular issues. And so every week we're going to be doing cases, and the entire course is going to be case-based. And so the cases we're going to be looking at is large packaging companies. We're going to be looking at Laura Ashley, which is a florally outdated fashion company. We're going to be looking at GM, also the case studies that I've done in my research, so Energy Australia, Visy, packaging, companies like that. And so I pretty much alluded to this. Research is really how we're going to get to understand what current issues are.